Hi, welcome to this edition of Pagosa Speaks. I'm Bonnie Hite.
And I'm Bob Hite. Thanks for being with us today. Our guests this morning are folks I like to think of as the first couple of Archuleta County, Fred and Norma Harman. Fred, as you may know if you're a resident of Pagosa Springs or the county, is the son of Fred Harman, the famed Western artist. Fred did fine art, but what he's most famous for, and what he helped to make Archuleta County and Pagosa Springs famous for, was the comic strip he created, Red Ryder and Little Beaver. It was syndicated in newspapers throughout the United States, translated into other languages, and read by folks around the world. Fred, there are a lot of famous Western artists, but not very many of them have their own museum. How did the Fred Harman Museum come to pass?
Well, basically, we were concerned about the fact that if he passed away, what would take place to hold all the artwork. And an accountant friend of mine and friend of my dad's and I decided to, in 1949, to set up a museum corporation at that point. So we threw all the artwork into that corporation. He did over 400 major oils in those last 18 years.
How many years did the comic strip run?
Well, it ran, his first comic, he got started in 1934 from Pagosa here, and he took one of very good friends of ours, a cowhand that he grew up with as a kid. His dad was the old stagecoach driver here back in those days, and Bill Flaw. And so he took Bill and they got in the car. I don't know where they got the car from because we didn't own one then. And so they headed north up to Denver and up into Wyoming and then headed further out, visiting all the newspapers, trying to sell them the idea on this new comic strip. It was called Bronc Peeler at that time. Well, nobody knew what a Bronc Peeler was. So
Okay, educate me. Go ahead.
What's a bronc peeler?
What is it?
Bronc rider.
Okay.
He peeled a peeler horse, the horse peeled out.
Gotcha. I'd never heard that term before.
Yeah. So anyway, they finally got into San Francisco and they sold the first comic or newspaper was the San Francisco Chronicle, and that was the beginning. And then they headed down south, and armed with the fact that he sold one newspaper up in San Francisco, he sold an LA paper. I'm not sure just what newspaper that was. Then headed back to Pagosa. But during that trip, my dad, during the daytime, he'd be up in a hotel room doing more comic strips and trying to get ahead. And while Bill was out there someplace playing cards to pay for board and room, so as they hiccuped all the way across.
How did it evolve into Red Ryder?
Well, in 1938, he was working out of New York for a while, and an agent wanted to represent him, and so he was. And then a newspaper firm came down from Chicago, and they were looking for this fellow that was doing this Bronc Peeler, and he asked the people in the office where could he find Fred Harman. And my dad heard the name bandied around, so he hollered out, "He's right here." So that agent, that publisher really, got the thing started, and but they just wanted a name change. He had Little Beaver in the comics.
With the Bronc Peeler?
Yeah. In the latter part of the years. And but that started Red Ryder.
Now you were working in New York at CBS.
Yeah.
And you met this gal.
Yeah.
In New York.
Yeah.
Right.
Now Norma, He drags you, after he retires from CBS, he drags you to this little tiny town way out west in the mountains. That had to be quite, to a museum. That had to be a pretty dramatic
It was
lifestyle
a
change.
change of culture,
Yeah.
big time. I'd never been west of the Hudson River, you know, really. But I went on blind faith, and it was a good move.
Did you know it immediately when you were here? that This was
Absolutely.
the place?
Took me 3 minutes to get adjusted.
Was she,
I like the pace, the slowness of compared to New York.
Yeah, totally different. What year was that?
1982.
Okay.
well, she was farming upstate.
I had a place up in Franklin, New York,
Yeah.
26 acres, and I thought that's where I'm going to live. And he said, "What are you going to go there for? Why don't you come out west?" So not only was it me, but it was my aged mother, who was 86, and my 2 children, 2 of them, 2 girls. Jennifer and Lisa came, and my dog, and we all traveled out.
So you were no stranger to an agricultural community.
No, not really.
Then when we got out here, we had a whole bunch of stumps. All this area is all second growth timber. It was all timbered off back when I was a kid, and so we had I guess a better part of 100 stumps out there, you know, where the museum is. And I bought her a tractor for birthday.
That's
That's the
romantic.
thing I ever
Glad
had.
it wasn't your wedding anniversary.
I got a stepladder for that.
Oh, no.
Well, it's very practical.
So anyway, she was clearing the stumps, and people would be driving by. We didn't have much traffic here then in '82. The town hadn't really got started, and there was still, you know, a lot of horses running loose.
No traffic lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put the
Wild horses were still running through here in '82?
well, not wild horses, but we had the hickory Apaches coming up all the time. And
We had
camping
sheep
around.
coming through,
Yeah, usually big herds of sheep,
flocks,
and so they would,
flocks.
we called them herds, but anyway, they would move maybe 1,000 head of sheep through,
Wow.
and and for permission, kind of like they would hang a skinned out lamb hanging in a tree for us, you know.
I don't understand the significance of that.
Well,
Well, we let them
thank
pass
you.
through the pasture, so they left some meat.
Oh, I see.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because there was no toll. Couldn't pay anything.
Sure.
Leave a sheep.
Yeah.
But
That works.
yeah, when I was a kid, they'd move a lot of cattle through right down the main street, and the Hickoryas used to come up and camp around the hot springs all the time, and they'd have a long stick with a string on it and a bull Durham sack tied on the end of that stick, and they'd be cooking eggs in the hot water.
With the egg in the sack, is
In
that?
the,
Yeah,
in the
in
hot
the-
spring,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. How about that?
boiling water.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a 3-minute egg or not, but
You know, there are a lot of people that haven't even been to the Fred Harman Museum, which is kind of hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
But for those people that have not been there, tell us what's in it.
well, it's basically the house that my folks built back a number of years back. My mother bought the land, about 50 acres, and she paid, oh golly, it was about $16 an acre at the time, and we could have had all the way down to Pfeiffer Monument and for $14. But she thought my dad would kind of be, well, he was not a buyer and seller. All he wanted to do was draw, and he did all that per memory.
Yeah. Well, he was an artist, not a
Yeah.
businessman.
Yeah.
And we're going to find a lot of his art, was left in the museum,
Yeah.
Yeah.
as well as
Some
comic
memorabilia
strips,
from Red Rider.
Yeah.
The comics are there, and
some movie memorabilia.
Yeah.
yes, and paintings. A
lot of
lot of
paintings.
beautiful paintings.
Well, I think if people haven't been there, they need to go. It is a landmark here in Pagosa Springs, and we wanted to showcase and highlight the Harmans because they are one of the jewels in our crown here.
See, what he painted actually was the history of this country.
And if you want to see the history of this part of our great country, be sure to stop by the Fred Harman Red Ryder Museum. Well, thanks so much for coming to see us, folks. We hope you'll come back real soon.
We will.
Absolutely.
And we hope you'll join us again for Pagosa Speaks from the Boulder Coffee Cafe in Pagosa Springs. I'm Bonnie Hite.
And I'm Bob Hite. Take care.